Hello folks, time for another spreadsheet tutorial from yours truly. This week it's going to be a short video. I'm going to give you another exercise to practice some of your skills. When you see the spreadsheet that I'm going to get you to do, not a lot of typing, quite a small table, but quite in depth with the things that you're going to have to do with it. I want to demo something first. Here is a small table I've created. Well, not really demo, just explain something and show you a little thing. This if statement in the discount column is checking these figures, and if they are spending more than £500, they get 10% discount. If they're spending less than £500 or £500 on its own, you know what I mean, 501 upwards, they get 10%. 500 down the way, they only get 5%. So there is an if statement in here, but it's money you're dealing with. And we want to stick an extra layer of protection in there. So there can be no calculation mistakes anytime. I want these two figures to be the only ones that's accepted. I think I mentioned this in an earlier video, I may not have, but anyway, I'll cover it now. I want to make sure that nothing apart from those two figures can be placed in these cells. So the way I'm going to do that is data validation, but I'm going to do it so that there's no drop-down box. It's just making sure that only 5 or 10% can be in these cells. Now, there is an if statement in here already, as you see, but I'm going to validate over the top of the if statement. I've done the if statement first. That's kind of important. So if I highlight these and say I want to data validation, I don't want any value. I want a list. Now, I've not named this list. It's just a small section of the spreadsheet with two percentages there. So look, I'm just going to click this button here for the source. Normally in here, you would write equals in the name of the list, yeah? So this time, I'm going to just select these two, press return, and they appear in here as absolute values. Then, in-cell dropdown. No, I don't want an in-cell dropdown. That's the wee dropdown list you've been working with before. Okay, that. Now look, it just looks the same, nothing's happened. But if I try and enter anything in here apart from 5 or 10%, let's try 6%. Error. The value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. Cancel, and it goes back to 5%. Try and add anything in there. Oops. Apart from 5 or 10%, it's going to error. The value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. So with that in mind, here is your today task. Now, you can pause this to check these figures here, because you'll use these to check your answers, yeah? But I'm not going to show you how it's done. I'm going to take that out. So this is a table of people who have worked more than the standard 40-hour week. This is a table of people who have done overtime. The overtime column has an if statement in there. If they work more than 50 hours, they get 20% overtime. Otherwise, they get 10% overtime. This part here, the overtime column is also data validated, so that only the values 10% or 20% can be put in those cells. No drop-down boxes to be used in the data validation. The small validated overtime percent table underneath the main table is used for data validation, i.e. this. These are your data validation figures, so that in here, only these figures can appear. What I showed you a minute ago in that other small table. Right, the gross pay column has to be protected so that the values cannot be edited. Yeah, so this column here. Now let me tell you gross pay. If I work 45 hours at £21.45 per hour, so equals this times this, gives me my basic pay. The if statement will tell me whether that's 10 or 20%. So let's say it's 10% for argument's sake. Wait a minute, if they work over, wait a minute. If they work over 50, no, it'll be 10%. Right, okay, so the next figure I need is that times 10%. These two added together, that plus that, will be the guy's new figure. So These three figures that I've done here, this is the hard part of this spreadsheet. It's all to be done in here. So there's two sums you're going to do in there. This times this is the first part, and then you're going to add on this times 10%, which will give you his overtime, 10% overtime rate. Add the two of them together in the cell. Yeah, what else? Create a column chart that shows the employee name against the hourly rate. Make sure the chart is titled and labelled correctly. So employee name against hourly rate. Remember, when you're selecting two cells for a chart, first one, no control key, then hold down the control key and select the second one. If you do something like this, make a mistake and try and patch it up, click somewhere, start again. First one, no control key, two perfect selections, second one with control key. That's how you select data for a chart. Now, the gross pay is the one that's going to have you a wee bit of a head scratcher, unless you're good with numbers. But that's all for today. When you're finished, I want you to drop it into the exercise Dropbox. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in class.